Imagine this. Imagine a tree growing from the side of a cliff. No rich soil, no protection from the wind. Every storm bends it sideways. Every season tries to strip it bare. And yet somehow its roots push deeper into the rock. It twists towards the light anyway. Now, from a distance, someone might look at that tree and say, it's growing wrong. But the tree is not broken. The tree is not growing wrong. The tree is adapting. Its resistance to the cliff, to the wind, to the impossible conditions around it is exactly what keeps it alive. Human beings do this too. Sometimes what psychology calls defiance, avoidance, or non-compliance is actually the soul finding a way to survive under pressure. Sometimes refusing to forget, refusing to assimilate, refusing to become silent is the deepest form of healing available. Today, we explore the role of resistance in healing. Assalamu alaikum. I am Talha Al-Ali. Today, we are exploring Chapter 5, the role of resistance in healing. I chose to open this chapter with a quote from Alice Walker. Resistance is the secret of joy. In the world of mental health, we are often told that resistance is a barrier to treatment, something to be managed or overcome. But in decolonized practice, we flip that logic entirely. We see resistance as a profound act of survival and critical forces in psychological healing, especially when the person coming to the room is suffering from systemic harm and systemic injustice. When we work with clients who survived displacement, occupation, or systemic erasure, we aren't just looking for coping mechanisms. We are looking for agency. We are looking for the ways the spirit refuses to be broken. In this episode, we will look at how saying no to a system or simply refusing to forget where we came from can be the most therapeutic act of all. To do so, we need to move beyond pathological labels. Let's talk about the language we use in clinical settings. Western models frequently label defiance or silence as non-compliance or defense mechanism. But a decolonized therapist must ask different questions. What wisdom does this resistance carry? What is it protecting? What story does it tell? Often, what appears as symptom is actually a survival strategy. For example, the refusal of neutral accent. I think of a Palestinian friend of mine living in Europe. At her university, there was subtle, constant pressure for her to adopt a neutral accent, to sound more local or to sound more normal. She refused. Her decision to retain her voice literally and metaphorically became a powerful symbol of self-definition. In therapy, validating that refusal is not just about culture. It's about supporting her integrity against a system that wants her to assimilate into invisibility. And this is everyday defiance. Resistance can be quiet as well. Resistance doesn't always look like a protest in the street. Sometimes it's a quiet domestic act that preserves a sense of home in the middle of chaos. I worked with a Syrian man in Jordan who refused to let displacement erase his history. He spent hours teaching his children the names of every street and hill in their home village. He described the local stores and exactly what they sold, even how they smelled. Some might see this as stuck in the past, but it was a vital act of resistance. It was his way of safeguarding their identity in exile and resisting the psychological erosion that comes with being a refugee. I witnessed a similar pattern among Ukrainian clients I worked with when I was in Ukraine, a client who were displaced during the 2014 to 2018 conflict or war on Ukraine. Even in temporary shelters, they continued to plant herbs, brew specific teas, and keep traditional icons, to make traditional sweets. These gestures provided a rhythm and rootedness. They were small daily victories over dislocation that preserved their mental structure when the world around them was falling apart. This is embodied resistance. However, resistance as well can be spiritual lifeline and collective. One of the most powerful forms of resistance I've seen is collective resistance, the assertion of humanity in spaces designed to break it. And this brings me to detention centers in Libya. When I worked with African migrants in Libyan detention centers, they were subjected to extreme dehumanization, and yet they formed prayer circles and communal singing groups. They shared stories of their migration journeys. They shared stories from home. These weren't just spiritual acts, they were political affirmations. They were political affirmations of life. They used rhythmic tapping and chants to manage overwhelming emotions and reclaim a sense of time and place. These acts reminded them that they were still humans when the systems treated them as nothing, and it reminded them that they are part of something older and stronger than the oppression and injustice they are living under. And I remember a Yemeni woman, a grandmother, displaced by the war. We met in Jordan. She insisted on telling her children ancestral tales every night. She told me, if they forget who we are, then we are defeated. So preserving identity, resisting to give up the identity and to assimilate, was their form of resistance. Her storytelling was a form of maternal resistance and political continuity. And history has many examples of maternal resistance. It was a bridge between the trauma of the present and the dignity of the past. Resistance also happens when a client reclaims authorship over their own story, refusing the victim label the world has assigned. I worked with a Sudanese client who had been detained in Libya. He told me the system wanted him to believe that he was nothing. His healing process did not come from worksheets. It came from writing letters to his younger self and to those who had harmed him. And that was his narrative resistance. He wrote, "I am here, and I will not end quietly." He was moving from a problem-saturated identity, like illegal or displaced, to a counter-narrative that honored his truth. And I recall a Syrian man who had lost his brother in the war. In the aftermath, he returned to his grandmother's poetry. In our sessions, we explored how those verses served as emotional anchor. He said, "When I remember her words, I remember that I am not just a loss. I am from somewhere." Resistance here was the act of cultural remembering that restored his sense of coherence. And to conclude, what I would say is that resistance is the foundation of survival. As I close this episode, I want to emphasize that resistance is not a luxury. For many, it is the foundation of their survival. As therapists, our role is not to fix resistance, but to meet it with curiosity and reverence. We must distinguish between acts that cause harm and these life-affirming acts of defiance. When we validate a client's right to rage, to mourn, and to protest, we are not being political. We are being clinically precise. We accompany our clients not towards assimilation, but towards autonomy. We are helping them retrieve, witness, and name the stories that have been buried. Thank you for joining me for this exploration of the defiant soul. In our next episode, we will look at Chapter 6, focusing on complex intersections, where we dive into migration, identity, and the concept of unchilding. And thank you for staying with me for this 5th episode. If you think this podcast is resonating with you, please share it with people who might be interested. Stay with the work. It's the path towards reclaiming our shared humanity.